I came to America with exactly $42 in my pocket and zero connections. Today, I own 3 businesses worth over $2 million. These are the exact words of one of the American dreamers that you are about to learn about. What's their secret? It's not what you think. In the next few minutes, we're going to reveal the hidden wealth-building strategies that immigrants use, tactics you won't find in any finance book. These aren't get-rich-quick schemes, but powerful methods that have helped thousands build wealth from nothing. The $42 story. Meet our immigrant wealth heroes. Have you ever wondered how someone can arrive in a new country with less money than it costs to fill up your gas tank and still build $1 million business? It sounds like something from a fairy tale, but for thousands of immigrants who come to America every year, this is their reality. Let me introduce you to 3 remarkable people who turned pocket change into serious wealth, and did it without following any of the typical financial advice you hear about. Meet Minh Nguyen. When she fled Vietnam in 1979, all she had was $42 sewn into the lining of her jacket. Today, she owns Southern Spice Distribution, a food business worth over $2 million that supplies Asian ingredients to restaurants across 3 states. But her journey wasn't just about overcoming poverty. It was about facing obstacles that would make most of us quit on day one. When Mai arrived in California, she couldn't even ask for directions in English. Imagine trying to open a bank account when you can't understand the forms, or applying for jobs when you can't read the applications. I learn 5 new English words every day, Mai told me. First words I learn: job, work, money, food, thank you. But language barriers were just the beginning. Without a credit history, Mai was basically invisible to the financial system. No credit cards, no loans, no apartment leases. And then there was the discrimination, being told to go back to your country, while standing in line at the grocery store, or having potential landlords suddenly claim apartments were already rented when they saw her face. Mai's first job in America paid $3 an hour washing dishes at a Chinese restaurant. After a 12-hour shift, she'd walk 2 miles back to the 1-bedroom apartment she shared with 6 family members. I sleep on floor next to kitchen for 3 years, she explained. Every night I count my money and think about how to make more tomorrow. Then there's Raj Patel from Gujarat, India. He landed at JFK Airport in 1995 with $87, a computer science degree, and not a single professional connection. You'd think the degree would have been his golden ticket, but American employers wouldn't recognize his credentials. They looked at my resume like it was written in a foreign language, Raj recalled. One interviewer actually asked if computers in India were the same as in America. Despite the setbacks, Raj now runs NextGen Tech Solutions, a consulting firm valued at $1.5 million with clients including several Fortune 500 companies. How did he get from point A to point B without the network most successful tech entrepreneurs rely on? That's where the story gets interesting. And we can't forget Maria Gonzalez, who crossed the border from Mexico in 2001 with just $56 and a dream of creating security for her family. She couldn't even afford a bus ticket to her cousin's house, so she walked 17 miles on her first day in America. Today, Maria owns a real estate portfolio worth $3.2 million, 6 properties across 2 states that generate enough passive income to support her entire extended family. When I clean houses, I look at how people live, Maria said. I notice what makes nice home, how much things cost, where neighborhoods are growing. I'm not just cleaning, I'm learning about American real estate every day. What's fascinating about these 3 success stories is the common thread running through them. None of them built wealth the traditional American way. They didn't max out 401k, or follow the standard advice about starting with emergency funds or focusing on their credit scores. In fact, they couldn't. The traditional financial system wasn't designed for people in their position. I couldn't get a bank loan even after 2 years of perfect payment history on everything else. Raj's first credit card had a $200 limit with a $100 annual fee. Maria couldn't even open a checking account without a social security number for her first 3 years in America. So what did they do instead? They tapped into something far more powerful than traditional financial tools. They leveraged wealth-building methods that have been used in their home countries for generations. Methods that don't require good credit, don't demand perfect English, and don't need expensive financial advisors. Mai found a way to raise $10,000 for her first food stall without ever talking to a banker. Raj built a professional network from absolute zero, turning cultural gatherings into career opportunities. And Maria bought her first property years before her American-born co-workers, despite earning the same modest income. These aren't just heartwarming stories of perseverance, though they're definitely that too. They're masterclasses in alternative wealth creation, packed with strategies that anyone, immigrant or not, can use to build financial security, even when the traditional paths seem closed. What's most surprising is that these immigrants didn't succeed despite their cultural backgrounds. They succeeded because of them. The very things that made them seem disadvantaged in American society contained hidden financial superpowers that most native-born Americans never discover. In Vietnam, Mai had learned about ancient community banking systems that predate Western financial institutions by centuries. Raj brought with him the Indian tradition of professional networking that turns social connections into business opportunities. And Maria applied Mexican family economics principles that allow whole communities to build wealth together rather than individually. Americans think you need money to make money, Mai told me with a smile. In Vietnam, we know you need people to make money. Money comes later. Each of these wealth heroes found themselves caught between two worlds, the traditions of their homelands and the requirements of their new country. But instead of simply assimilating and adopting American financial practices, they created something much more powerful. Hybrid strategies that combined the best of both worlds. They took ancient practices that had been tested over generations in their home countries and adapted them to the American economic landscape. The results were financial pathways that most financial advisors never talk about, because most financial advisors have never had to build wealth starting from absolute zero. When you have nothing, Raj explained, you see opportunities that comfortable people miss. Necessity makes you creative. Being an outsider lets you question systems that insiders take for granted. As I spent time with Mai, Raj, and Maria, I realized they weren't just building businesses or investing in properties. They were creating entirely new wealth formulas that defied conventional financial wisdom while producing extraordinary results. And here's what you need to understand. Their methods weren't just good enough alternatives to traditional financial strategies. In many cases, they were actually superior, producing faster results with less risk and greater resilience during economic downturns. The Rotating Credit Association, banking without banks. When traditional banks wouldn't give Mai a chance, she turned to a financial system that predates modern banking by centuries. While Americans might view banking as a complex system of credit scores and loan applications, immigrants like Mai tap into something far more powerful, community trust. And the results? They're nothing short of remarkable. After 7 banks rejected Mai's loan applications despite her detailed business plan and food expertise, she faced a critical decision. Without the capital to start her food stall, her dream would remain just that, a dream. But Mai had access to something most Americans have never heard of, a hui. When no bank would help me, I remembered how my mother and aunties handled money back home, Mai explained. In Vietnam, we don't wait for permission from banks to start a business. A hui is essentially a rotating savings and credit association, ROSCA, that Vietnamese communities have relied on for thousands of years. The concept is brilliantly simple, yet incredibly effective. In Mai's case, 10 community members each contributed $1,000 monthly to create a collective pot of $10,000. Each month, one member receives the entire pot, creating an instant injection of capital without the red tape of traditional banking. The beauty of this system is that it operates entirely on trust. No credit checks, no collateral requirements, no interest payments. Instead, something far more powerful enforces repayment, your reputation within the community. Missing your payment isn't just a financial problem, it's a social catastrophe, Mai explained. Your family would lose face, your children would be affected, your standing in the community would be destroyed. That's why almost nobody defaults. When Mai's turn came to receive the pot, she immediately invested the full $10,000 in restaurant equipment and initial inventory for her first food stall. While her American counterparts might have spent months or years trying to build credit to qualify for a high-interest business loan, Mai was already serving customers and generating income. What's fascinating is that these community banking systems aren't unique to Vietnamese culture. They exist across immigrant communities with different names but similar structures. Tandas in Mexican communities, susus among West African immigrants, and chit funds in Indian circles. Each operates on the same principle of collective financial power and social accountability. The most mind-blowing part? These informal, financial systems consistently achieve repayment rates between 95–98%, significantly outperforming many traditional banks and credit card companies. Why? Because social capital creates far stronger incentives than legal contracts ever could. Think about it. If you miss a credit card payment, you might damage your credit score. If you miss a Hui payment, you damage your standing in your entire community, potentially affecting your children's opportunities and your family's reputation for generations. The stakes are exponentially higher. This system also creates unique advantages beyond just accessing capital. Members develop deep networks of mutual support, share business advice informally during meetings, and often become each other's first customers. The Hui doesn't just provide money, it provides an entire ecosystem for entrepreneurial success. For immigrants like Mai who operate without the safety net of generational wealth or established credit, these systems turn their greatest perceived disadvantage, being outside the traditional banking system, into a surprising strength. What Americans see as primitive or risky, we see as reliable and human, Mai noted. Banks need paperwork to trust you. In our community, we trust each other because we know each other. The system isn't without challenges. Operating outside formal banking regulations means these associations lack certain protections. If a member truly cannot pay due to emergency, the group must absorb that loss collectively. However, the tight social bonds typically mean members work together to cover temporary hardships rather than allowing defaults. What's particularly interesting is how the Hui adapts to American life. Back in Vietnam, participants might contribute smaller amounts weekly. In America, where members typically earn more but have higher expenses, the contributions grow larger and often shift to monthly cycles. The fundamental principles remain unchanged, but the execution evolves to match economic realities. Mai's experience reveals something critically important. Financial inclusion doesn't always have to come from traditional institutions. Sometimes, communities create their own solutions that work better than the mainstream alternatives. When I got my $10,000, I didn't just receive money, Mai explained. I received the collective belief of 9 other people who trusted me to succeed. That's something no bank loan could ever provide. For immigrant entrepreneurs, these systems offer a fascinating hack around one of America's biggest barriers to wealth creation: the credit system that often excludes newcomers regardless of their actual reliability or business acumen. When traditional doors remain closed, immigrants simply build their own doors. The implications go far beyond individual success stories. These systems demonstrate that financial trust doesn't have to be mediated by complex scoring algorithms, extensive documentation, or high interest rates. Perhaps the sophisticated Western banking system has something to learn from these ancient approaches to community finance. As traditional banking evolved toward impersonal relationships mediated by credit scores and automated systems, something valuable was lost: the human element of financial relationships. In Hui systems, members look each other in the eye, understand each other's dreams, and hold each other accountable in ways no computer algorithm ever could. This also explains why these systems thrive particularly well in immigrant communities, where social bonds are often stronger due to shared experiences, cultural connections, and the necessity of supporting each other in a new country. When your community is your safety net, you protect that community at all costs. What's most remarkable about Mai's story isn't just that she found an alternative to traditional banking. It's that she found a superior alternative. One that provided capital faster, with zero interest, minimal paperwork, and built-in community support for her business venture. The Hui doesn't just work despite lacking the sophisticated trappings of modern banking. It works because it lacks them, replacing complexity with simplicity and bureaucracy with human relationships. Network arbitrage, creating professional connections from scratch. While Mai leveraged community trust to secure funding, there's another invisible asset immigrants exploit that's even more powerful in certain situations. What happens when you arrive in America with plenty of skills, but absolutely zero professional connections? For Raj, this seemingly impossible obstacle became his greatest opportunity through a strategic approach I call network arbitrage. The traditional American job hunting playbook promises that with the right resume and enough applications, qualified candidates will eventually land interviews. But Raj quickly discovered the painful reality that many immigrants face. Skills alone aren't enough. After submitting over 200 online applications to tech companies, his impressive engineering background netted him just 3 interviews and 0 job offers. The digital application system was a black hole that swallowed his credentials without a trace. I realized I was playing a game designed for people who already had connections, Raj later explained. The online application system isn't built for outsiders. What makes this situation particularly frustrating is that Raj wasn't lacking in technical abilities. He had the engineering skills companies needed. What he lacked was a way to showcase those skills to decision-makers who could actually hire him. This invisible barrier separating qualified immigrants from employment opportunities is rarely discussed in conventional career advice. This is where network arbitrage comes in, a strategy that transforms cultural connections into professional opportunities. Unlike traditional networking, which often feels transactional, network arbitrage leverages the natural bonds that form within cultural communities to create genuine relationships that can open professional doors. Raj's breakthrough came when he shifted his focus from submitting online applications to becoming an active participant in his local Indian community. He began volunteering at cultural events organized by the Indian Association in his city. Instead of directly asking for job leads, he simply showed up consistently, helping with everything from setup to cleanup. Each event became an opportunity to meet established Indian professionals already working in the tech industry. His approach was systematic and patient. During these cultural gatherings, Raj would listen carefully to conversations, noting which attendees worked at technology companies. Rather than immediately asking for job referrals, he built authentic relationships first. He'd engage people in discussions about their work, asking thoughtful questions about technical challenges their companies faced. The magic of Raj's strategy was in how he created value before requesting anything in return. When he discovered the community center's website was outdated and difficult to navigate, he offered to rebuild it for free. This small project showcased his technical abilities in a tangible way while providing a genuine service to the community. Word spread quickly about the talented engineer who had modernized the community website. Raj didn't stop there. He began offering free coding lessons to the children of community members, teaching basic programming skills every Saturday morning. Parents who worked in tech companies watched as their children developed new skills under Raj's guidance. These simple acts of service built his reputation as both technically competent and personally trustworthy, 2 qualities essential for job referrals. In India, we have a saying that translates roughly to first give, then receive, Raj explained. I wasn't strategically calculating each interaction. I was simply following the principles I grew up with. Contribute to your community first, and the community will support you in return. The contrast with his previous approach couldn't have been starker. Instead of being one faceless resume among hundreds, Raj became a known entity with proven skills and personal relationships. When a senior engineer from his community mentioned an opening at his company, the recommendation came with personal credibility. He's not just good with code, he's been teaching my daughter programming for months. He's the real deal. That warm introduction led to Raj's first interview at a promising tech startup, where he was hired within a week. The hiring manager later admitted that they typically didn't consider candidates without U.S. work experience, but the personal recommendation had convinced them to make an exception. What makes network arbitrage such a powerful strategy is that it transforms the very disadvantages immigrants face into strengths. The same cultural differences that sometimes create barriers in mainstream professional settings become bonds within cultural communities. These communities function as powerful professional networks precisely because they're built on something stronger than mere professional convenience. They're built on shared experiences, cultural understanding, and mutual support. This approach works across virtually all immigrant communities. Vietnamese entrepreneurs find suppliers through community connections. Mexican immigrants secure their first construction jobs through hometown networks. Nigerian professionals mentor newly arrived countrymen navigating corporate America. The effectiveness of network arbitrage highlights a fascinating paradox in American professional culture. While the system theoretically values meritocracy, in practice, relationships often matter more than qualifications alone. Immigrants who recognize this reality and strategically build community connections can bypass traditional gatekeepers. What's particularly remarkable about Raj's story is that he didn't just use network arbitrage to land his first job. He continued using this approach throughout his career. When he later launched his own consulting business, his first clients came from relationships he built within the Indian community. His reputation for technical excellence and personal integrity had become his most valuable professional asset. The lessons from Raj's experience extend beyond immigrant communities. In today's hyper-connected but paradoxically isolated professional landscape, the ability to build genuine community relationships has become a rare and valuable skill. While most professionals focus on expanding their LinkedIn connections, those who invest in deeper community ties often find more meaningful opportunities. For job seekers from any background, Raj's approach offers a powerful alternative to the soul-crushing cycle of online applications. Find communities where you can contribute genuine value. Build relationships based on shared interests rather than professional utility. Demonstrate your skills through helpful actions rather than just claiming them on a resume. The subtle genius of network arbitrage is that it doesn't require special connections or privileged access to work. It simply requires a willingness to shift focus from impersonal systems to human relationships. In Raj's case, cultural community provided the context, but collective economics, how group purchasing creates individual wealth. While Raj turned social connections into career opportunities, Maria faced a completely different challenge: achieving homeownership on a housekeeper's salary. The math didn't just look difficult, it looked impossible. Financial experts calculated that someone in Maria's position would need 23 years of consistent saving just to afford a down payment on a modest home. But Maria didn't resign herself to this timeline. Instead, she tapped into a collective strategy that compressed decades of wealth building into mere months. "I remember looking at the numbers and feeling sick," Maria once told me. "Even if I saved every extra dollar, I'd be nearly 50 before I could buy even the smallest house in my neighborhood." This realization could have crushed her dreams, but instead, it pushed her toward an alternative approach that many Mexican-American families have used for generations. Rather than pursuing the traditional American path of individual homeownership, Maria organized a property investment collective with 5 family members. The setup was brilliantly simple. Each person contributed $200 monthly to a shared fund. While this amount might seem modest, the combined $1,200 monthly quickly accumulated into something substantial. Within just 18 months, a fraction of the 23 years Maria would have needed on her own, the group had saved enough for a down payment on their first property. They strategically targeted a fixer-upper that banks considered high risk, but that they knew had potential. The property needed significant work, but that's where the collective model really showed its genius. Instead of hiring contractors, the family members divided responsibilities based on their individual skills. Maria's uncle, who had years of construction experience back in Mexico, handled all major repairs. Her cousin, who worked in an accounting office, managed the financial aspects, tracking expenses, handling tax documents, and keeping detailed records of each member's contributions. Maria herself took on coordination of rental matters once they began acquiring additional properties. "We turned what Americans see as a disadvantage, multiple families living together, into our biggest financial advantage," Maria explained. The group lived together in their first property while renovating it, allowing them to avoid paying rent elsewhere while simultaneously improving their investment. The shared living arrangement meant shared expenses, which enabled them to continue building their collective fund even after making their first purchase. After completing renovations, the property's value increased substantially. This equity growth became the foundation for their next strategic move. Rather than each taking a cut of the profits, they leveraged the equity to secure financing for a second property. This snowball effect continued as they repeated the process, transforming one modest investment into multiple properties. What makes this collective economics model particularly powerful is how it formalizes arrangements that might otherwise lead to conflict. The group created a limited liability company, LLC, to hold their properties, providing legal protection while establishing clear ownership percentages based on contributions. This structure addressed common concerns about collective ownership, such as what happens if someone wants to exit the arrangement. The impact of this approach on wealth timelines is staggering. In traditional models, individual homebuyers must save for decades before purchasing a single property. Through collective economics, Maria's family compressed that timeline dramatically, acquiring their first property in just 18 months. Even more impressive, they expanded their portfolio from 1 property to 5 within a decade, a pace of growth that would be virtually impossible for a single minimum wage earner. The secret isn't just pooling money, Maria noted. It's pooling skills, knowledge, and responsibilities. Each family member contributed beyond their financial investment, creating a multiplier effect on their collective resources. When maintenance issues arose, they didn't need to hire expensive contractors. When rental decisions needed to be made, they had built-in advisors. This comprehensive resource sharing created efficiencies that individual investors rarely achieve. The model has gained such traction that formal structures have emerged to support it.